Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff with Astroscoop Deep Dive Astrology Coaching, Western Astrology. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm looking to the west, and it has only been dark for not even an hour, about 50 minutes, 45 minutes, and we're seeing the energy of the spring really move forward. So it's wonderful, and it's warmer here as well. So I see Carolyn's here. Happy Friday. Happy Friday as well. We have a couple people. We'll wait a few minutes, see if anyone else trails in. And how's your spring going? It's always a great feeling when April hits, because not only are we 2 weeks into spring here in this hemisphere, 2 weeks in, but it really starts to feel like there's more of a balance with everything, with the weather, the sunlight, the energy. And this is also a really nice time, especially in the East Coast. This is a nice time where we get several weeks of really pleasant weather, even though the mornings are chilly and the nights are chilly, but that's good. But then we get this like nice little period for 4 or 5 weeks where Aries expresses the spring energy. Yes, absolutely. And we get this period where it's not too hot, it's not cold, and hopefully we won't have to use the heat or AC, and we'll get a lot of natural sunlight and natural ventilation from the air outside, cross ventilation, and that's a wonderful thing. So that's always a good thing from Aries, especially going into Taurus, when the spring feels more solid, and then the weather and the animals are really in the swing of doing the spring thing. So it's a really good thing. Tonight, we're going to talk more about Aries people having birthdays. Today is April 4th, 2025. So we have 2.5 weeks left of Aries, believe it or not. And today, being the 4th, we're still in the second decan of Aries, the Leo decan, which I talked about last week. And if you're tuning in, if you're new, or you catch this on the replay, all of my live streams are in order under my playlist under live. Good evening, Karen says. Good evening to you. Hope you're well. And you could just find that all my live streams under live. And then you can find all the videos under videos from popular or oldest. And then, of course, I have very specific playlists, which makes it easy to find things as well. And I think the playlists are helping a lot of the US viewers come back to my channel in the last couple of months with views. So I really appreciate the United States. I'm getting more views from my country as opposed to some of the other countries. And it's slow, but it still looks like we're moving forward a little bit more now that we're into Aries season. And we'll get into Aries in a minute. And I just want to mention that you can donate to the channel if you enjoy the content and you want to support a small astrology channel like myself. You can donate at Venmo, which is at Astroscoop. If that's confusing or you can't find me on Venmo, I can send you a link, and any amount is greatly appreciated. It's not about the amount, it's just about the thought and good intentions for supporting small channels. And I hope in the future, I hope to, at some point, I want to get a guest on here, and I want to start making this live stream more collaborative. I really, really want to have a live guest on here. So I'm going to work on that. And of course, any of you that know where I live, if you know anyone that's, let's say, within 30 or 40 minutes of a certain city area, maybe we could, set something up where even someone comes over here for just like a 10-minute. But of course, it would be really good to get someone young and fresh, and someone that's the current period that would be ideal, because a lot of my viewers are in their 20s and 30s. So I will continue to work on that, but that's definitely something I want to shoot for this year, is to make the live streams more collaborative and definitely get some more communication and different ideas going with, hopefully with other people. So that's that. And the live streams are here 8 p.m. right now. I've been keeping it at 8 Fridays here on Astroscoop 3801 on YouTube. You can follow me on X, Astro_Scoop, and Instagram, Astroscoop7. And I might join the other one. I think it's called Blue Sky. I may be joining that in the coming weeks, so I'll let you know about that as well. So last week we talked about Aries 2, the second decanate, and each time we talk about an astrological period, and you'll hear a lot of other astrologers talk about this, and they will give you the subtle differences between people that are the same sign, multiple people that you might know are the same sign, but that use the energy differently based on the week they're born. And the decans really help. Decanates really help to fine tune, because when you start to really think about when someone's born and you start to see multiple people or know multiple people born that week, it really gives you clues on how they're different from people born 2 weeks prior to them or a week or two after, as it gets closer to another sign or cusp especially. So that's a good thing. So last week was Aries 2, which were Aries people born between the 3rd and the 10th, which we're currently in right now. So this is very strong Aries solar energy right now. It's Mars energy, but it's very much tied to the sun in the constellation. So the Aries energy right now is not just Mars in Cancer, but it's actually reflecting itself back to the sun in Aries, like it would with a sun in Leo. And it's very well placed in Aries. So there's the sun energy right now in the exact middle of Aries. We're at 15 degrees tonight of Aries, which is exactly halfway of 30. So this is the kind of peak of Aries energy, not too early and not late, and not obviously on the cusp, which it will be on Taurus in 2.5 weeks. So Aries 2, that Leo influence, and the sun and Mars. It's a very, very good time for everyone right now to harness that fire sign energy. And this is especially true for people that do not have fire signs in their natal chart. So if you've had your birth chart done and your chart happens to lack fire, it doesn't mean that you lack personality or warmth or energy. That doesn't mean. It just means it's harder for you to tap into it, express it, harness it, and it's more hidden, it's more dormant in your chart. It's more dormant in yourself, most likely. And of course, that depends on what age, what cycles you're at. But if you're someone that has minimal fire, this is a really good time to locate Aries in your astrological chart, in your wheel, locate Aries and really concentrate on how you can use the Aries solar energy right now, which is heightened. And in traditional and modern astrology, the Aries sun energy is some of the strongest and most natural and at ease with being a sun sign. So that means anyone, wherever Aries is in your chart, you can tap into the the positive attributes of Aries. It could also indicate an area where you may choose to fight or resist something too, and hopefully it's a good fight. But Aries is a sign of strong vitality, especially the sun in Aries, which is the most vital placement. So anyone tuning into that, hopefully somewhere in your chart, you can find that vitality and that life force to feel strong and healed right now. And I wish everybody to be able to tune into that. So tonight, the live streams I mentioned are at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. Astroscoop is all about astrology. It's Western astrology. It's traditional and modern astrology, the planets and the zodiac signs. So the Aries 3 Decan that will be in next week, which is April 11th to right around the 18th. So we're in the second Decan, as I mentioned. So next week will be the very last Decan or late Aries energy. And it is a Mars person, obviously, because of Aries, but it's also, instead of the sun, as we talked about with the Leo Decan this week, next week will be Jupiter. So Aries people born between the 11th and the 18th are somewhat of a more mature version of Aries from the first and second decans, but also more of an intellectual or idealistic type of Aries person. And the Jupiter influence is very strong in influencing the person to either be, like I mentioned, scholarly or intellectual, but also sports activities, where Jupiter tends to be very prominent in athletes' charts as far as expansion and energy and risk and things like that. Jupiter making aspects to Mars or the Sun or ruling the chart. Jupiter often is prominent in those kinds of big activities. So Jupiter is the co-ruler right here. And so Mars and Jupiter creates a little more of like a statesman or stateswoman type of personality, more so than the second Decan, which we're in now, or the first Decan, which was all Mars. Now I have two people in my family that are born between the 11th and the 18th that I can think of. There might be another one, but I can think of two off the top of my head. And they definitely relate to ideals. So this constellation is Cetus, which is the whale. Now that's interesting because when I was talking about Pisces, I was talking about Pisces people, some people being more like a fish and some people being stronger and more assertive like a whale. But that was more literal, like the sea animal whale, where here we're talking about the symbolism and mythology of the constellation and Cetus, but with the later degrees of Aries being very strong with ideals. But this is interesting. This is the only Aries. This is rare that a fire sign has a Saturn influence in the constellation. At least some of the ancient astronomers gave this constellation, these degrees, a Saturn noted a Saturn influence on top of the Jupiter and Mars, and also even a slight Venus, even a slight Venusian or Venus influence. Now, I think the Venus influence stems from the fact when we talk about next, we'll be talking about the Aries-Taurus cusp, late Aries energy going into Taurus. And Taurus's ruler is Venus. So I think that's where that's coming into play. As we get closer later into Aries, we're getting a little away from the Mars and we're getting closer to the Venus energy. But it's interesting that these people have a Saturn, can have a sober or serious mindset, which is very much at odds with the impulse and the need to think freely and fast that a lot of Aries people have. So that can be, that's interesting. And when I was reading about the Saturn influence with the constellation, I thought about the two people I know in my family that are born this week. Plus, I have known other people born this week, late Aries people, and they are definitely very different than Aries born this week, and of course Aries that are born like late March, quite different. And I find them to be more softer somehow. Maybe that's the Saturn or sobering influence They're not as impulsive. They're not as outwardly aggressive or assertive. And they are opinionated. They have strong ideals. They're idealistic. They are opinionated. But somehow, maybe because of that constellation with the whale, they don't express it in as much of a, for the most part, a fiery manner. However, because of their ideals, they go through a lot of changes. So this is weird. I'm feeling a deja vu that I like just said this or I just did this. So I don't know if that's from last year's live stream or if it's something else I'm tuning into, but it's really strange. Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm going to say something now that I just said. So the changes is now Jupiter influencing the Decan, the Aries person, in addition to Mars. Jupiter is a Sagittarius influence, such as like tonight is the Leo Decan, it's the Sun influence. So Jupiter is Sag or Sagittarius. So Sag is very restless, it's mutable, opposite Gemini. So it creates a lot of change, especially when it's a co-ruler. And the ideals of an Aries person who says, I am not I am just because of my ego, but I am what I think, I am what I think about my ideals, or I am idealistic, that kind of thing. And they have very strong ideas when they have changes in their lives that relates to their own philosophy. And I even find these Aries people to be a little even oddly shy, which is not Aries. But Aries, this is the interesting thing about Aries people. Aries people can be very assertive and extroverted, but yet Aries is not a social sign. It's not a naturally social sign, if that makes any sense. So Aries can be extroverted about wanting to express themselves or receive recognition or feedback from what they're doing, but they're not necessarily social like naturally social like the air signs would be. So Aries have to work a little harder at it to maybe come out of their own thinking and be social and connect to the group, a one-on-one person, but also to the group around them as far as sharing their ideals and philosophy. And Kurha that's as part of the stars here. It gives diplomatic qualities, which is more Libran-like. So again, that relates to the Saturn constellation here. So it's interesting. I would imagine Aries people born this week, the 11th to 18th, feel at odds between this kind of sobering, diplomatic, idealistic side, which is more intellectual, and then their more natural Aries, impulsive, fiery side, especially the men. I imagine, and I see in the males born this week, I see them struggle with that, if that makes any sense. I can see that how they're different from Aries born this week and Aries born early on. So you would look to their Mars sign, of course, you would look to Jupiter, and maybe even to a lesser extent look at their Saturn as well. And but the Jupiter would be very, very influential. And if Mars and Jupiter in their chart, if someone was born the 11th or 12th and you happen to look up their chart and they had a Mars Jupiter aspect, that would be huge. You see the Mars Jupiter, you'll see that a lot in sports people. And you'll see that a lot in people that do things in a big way, even entertainers, and they're able to go really far with their energy. Not necessarily have stamina, but the Mars and the Jupiter expands their energy to where they will express their energy and push their energy to a point that the average person without a Mars Jupiter aspect will take it. And that obviously their health can suffer because of that. So keep that in mind for any of you budding astrologers, or if you are an astrologer and you do know how to look up a chart and look at the aspects, the little grid. If you know any of your loved ones or friends that have Mars Jupiter, especially Mars conjunction Jupiter or Mars square Jupiter, those are, I have two people in my family that have Mars square Jupiter, and it's very hard. It can be hard for them to direct their energy properly. They need very, very good specific outlets to not get sort of bottled up. But that's also with a Mars planet squaring anything would have to reconcile that. So a lot of changes. They can be diplomatic, although they're very strongly idealistic and opinionated. And these Aries people they probably want to help. They're more helpful than the other decans, like the decan we're in this week or the first decan. And that's mostly, I think, because of their idealism. So they want to give. Now, here's a big lesson for all Aries people and Aries planets, no matter what the degree is Aries people really need to learn to ask the other party or group, do you want to be led? Aries always wants to lead. So sometimes it's not necessary to lead unless people need it and want it. So and Aries people born this week are very into ideologies and strongly opinionated about that. So they have to be careful about sharing those ideologies with other people in a way that can be off-putting. Even if they're diplomatic about it, they're usually very, very strong about it. And because of the Jupiter influence, they can be very, go overboard. Anywhere where there's a Jupiter ruler or co-ruler, that part of the chart obviously can go overboard, as we talked about in Sagittarius, and take things too far. So they definitely have to be careful that all Aries people, but especially Aries born this week, about kind of feel out the other party or group. Do you want me to lead? Or are we leading? Are we side by side? We're leading together, sort of thing. So that's a big lesson for Aries planets, is to not just take over or run the show, and if it's not needed or received well. Now we're still dealing with the eyes. So Aries is the head. If you look at all the ancient civilizations and the mythology of Aries, they always talked about the rams and the sheep, and they always mentioned the sheep and ram's eyes being very prominent, the eyes respecting the head. And you see that in a lot of artifacts and things in books when you look at the civilizations that did certain rituals or worship with animals. If you see the ram head or sheep or whatever, very, very strong, prominent eyes, obviously the horns, and ears too. So I would imagine people born this week on this constellation, they would have very sensitive eyes and ears. Now, I'm not a medical astrologer, so I don't know that for sure, but it seems to make sense to me, because Aries is the head, but specifically this is the eyes and ears. And this is a very keen decan that with the Jupiter, they have very sharp minds, very keen, but you don't always know it. Aries people can seem overly simple, not dumb. I'm not saying dumb, just there's something overly natural and simple about them, laid back even. And so you can underestimate this Aries person, because their mind is much stronger than you think. That's what I noticed. The Aries born this week, the Leo Aries and the Aries born the first week, I can see the Aries and I can feel it more, especially with their mentality. But with Aries born this week, I don't see and hear as much of the fire. And I think that's because of that diplomatic side. But it's also because they have very, very keen eyes and ears, and they could have problems with that if they're not careful, if they overdo things. So my guess is, if the Aries person born this week has major Pisces in their chart, that is a big indicator that they're going to be a lot more introverted, shy even, quieter, but their mindset won't be any less strong or opinionated than the other Aries decans, most likely, unless there's really softening aspects to Mercury, or like I mentioned, major Pisces there. So, or even major, like just a lower key sign like Virgo, or maybe even Taurus, to keep Aries a little calmer, the fire. So this is a sign or a decan because of Jupiter. It can relate, and Saturn, it can relate to the law. Now, I don't look at this as like specifically like law, like a lawyer. Like that would be more straight on Libra to me, or Saturn Libra placement in astrology. Saturn, the combination of Saturn and Libra is more like law. This is more like not their own rules, not that they are necessarily a maverick or rogue, but they have their own sense, I think, their own sense of law in terms of how idealistic they are. It's funny, when I think of the two family members that are born this week, when I finally do get them talking, because they're both a little introverted, get them talking, they are very quietly passionate and strong-minded about whatever it is that comes out. If you can get that, they feel comfortable. So they're not expressing it in a weak way. So it's still very Aries. So that's the interesting part. And I think that's their sense of law is related to those ideals and those philosophies much more than the other Aries people. And the positive side of this decan is these Aries people are more group oriented, they're more social, and they are less egocentric for the most part. You won't find as many egotistical type Aries people, most likely, born this week. They may still have a strong sense of self, as most Aries people do, especially the males, but you won't, may not be as off-putting, and it may be a little more palatable because of the Jupiter influence. But they have their own kind of sense of law, I see, and it's kind of like whether they force that on others or not because of their ideology and what they believe, that's another story. But they can be critics with humor. So they're a little bit, I wouldn't say they're like Virgo, but they're a little bit cutting with their humor, and I put bite here. They have a little bit of a bite with their humor. So I would say out of Aries born, the whole Aries period, the whole month, Aries born this week would have the most potential sarcasm or sense of humor that is a little sharp or biting, even if it's in a quiet way. And they like to play with that. And if they're more intellectual Aries type people, they will maybe battle with you on a more mental level or fight on a mental level, and maybe want to disarm you with argument or humor, which again, that is kind of maybe their own kind of law. So they like to plan. So this is interesting, because when you think about when we started spring, it's the rebirth. After the Pisces Aries cusp, we get into true Aries energy, which is the sprouting the seed of life and ideas. That's Aries. And Aries just wants to start. It doesn't matter what they're doing or where they're going or if they're going to finish or make it to their destination. They just want to start. Then we get into this week, which is the Leo decan, and it becomes more of a steady, warm, more leonine kind of flame for Aries. And then we come into next week, and then the steady flame of Aries comes into a more intellectual and Jupiter type of Aries person, which loves planning. And again, they do this, these would be good event planners, social planners, bringing people together. And that is not necessarily a natural Aries strength to bring people together, especially people that are differing. That would be more other signs, especially the air signs. But an Aries born this week with the Jupiter influence could do that. They do like planning and organizing and moving around. They're very, very active. But the lesson here, as I mentioned, is allow others help. So that's twofold. That's that. So I piggyback on my comment I made a few minutes ago. They really need to ask people and feel people out if those people, loved ones or friends, want to be led, because maybe they don't want to be led or they don't need to be, but they also should allow others to help them. So that's a big issue for Aries 3 people. This could be an issue for all Aries people, men and women, can be very kind of masculine and want to do things themselves and not ask for help. But especially born this week, I see that. And I'm not sure if that's pride, because that would be more Leo, but it's also possibly because of their intellectual, they want to figure things out intellectually themselves and want to figure that out and not ask for help unless absolutely necessary. So that's a lesson for them, is obviously to incorporate the opposite here, the opposite, which is Libra 3 in 6 months, which is late Libra. And that's the week of theater. So late Libra people, Libra 3 and Aries 3 people are similarly intellectual, but the way they use their intellectualism is different, obviously, because one's air and one's fire. But I mentioned, weeks ago, how the opposites in astrology, Aries and Libra, has a very magnetic polarity, and it's a very strong attraction between Aries planets and Libra planets. And then that also goes for if your natal chart, if you have Aries and Libra, you're going to have the archetypes of love energy acting out within your chart, right? You're going to have, if you have Mars and Venus or Aries and Libra planets, for example, if someone has the aspect Venus conjunct Mars in their chart, even if it's not in Libra or even if it's not in Aries, if they have Venus conjunct Mars, those two energies are coming together in a forceful way, in a strengthened way. But any Aries and Libra placements that are opposed in your chart, that would play out. Play out in a kind of a theatrical, philosophical way. So that would be interesting to see an Aries 3 person that also had a Libra 3 planet that was a late degree, like a 21 or 22 degree Libra planet that would be opposed the Sun in Aries. But it's always good for Aries people to tune into what others are saying. Tune into others saying. So that's another lesson for Aries people in general. That's not a strength of Aries. This is where Aries gets into a lot of hot water with people, especially Aries males. Aries are not naturally empathetic like Pisces. Aries are not naturally patient like Capricorn. Aries are not naturally people pleasers like Libra could be. So there's sometimes a selfishness in the Aries person where they're not tuning into what others are actually saying or not saying. So it would be very good for late Aries people to tune in and incorporate that opposite Libra function. And then, of course, in 6 months, when I talked about Libra, I'm sure I mentioned about them incorporating the Aries function. So it's similar yet different. And so that's a very, very strong thing with all the polarities in the zodiac, is how you are similar to your opposite sign. You both have the same quality, but you have different elements, obviously different rulers, and you're using some of the same kind of energy, like cardinal energy. Aries and Libra are cardinal, which is active and pushy in different ways, that kind of thing. And what's interesting, I've done charts and met Libra people that were very Aries or Arian to me, or very Aries-like. And I've met Aries people that were very Libra-like. Now, that could be because they have the opposite sign in their chart, that I didn't know about, like a rising or something, but it could also be that they've learned somehow or were influenced by family or friends to tap into that opposite energy, but they're still using the same quality of cardinal, that sort of thing. That's where Libra, Libra planets can be, you can underestimate a Libra planet sometimes in the chart as being too nice or too people pleasing, or avoiding conflict kind of thing. But that doesn't mean Libra can't be strong when its values or ideals are come into play. And that's how very much how an Aries 3 person would be. So if an Aries 3 person, let's say this person between the 11th and 18th, let's say they're very politically minded. Doesn't matter if they're liberal, conservative, grassroots, right, left, doesn't matter where they would be on the spectrum. If they're strongly, I was going to say religious, but strongly political, strongly philosophical about it, they will probably be more of the extreme, either extreme, Democratic or extreme liberal or extreme conservative. Most likely, they would be one or the other, and they may have a tough time because they're so into their ideals and philosophy. They may have a tough time yielding. They can be unyielding in an intellectual kind of way, probably more so than the other Aries decans that we've talked about. So that's another interesting lesson for them. So that would be definitely good for them to incorporate the Libra energy. But they're definitely late Aries people between the 11th and 18th. Maybe it's because of the constellation of the whale. There's definitely overall, I just see a little bit, the fire is a little bit dimmer and a little softer, and you just don't see the fire from them as much. Now, of course, I haven't known thousands and thousands and thousands of people born this week. So if that Aries person had a Mars in, let's say, Leo, or a Mars in Scorpio or Sag, that could fire up, so to speak, could fire up the chart and the energy, and then you might see more of it come out regularly. All right, so let's look at the transits. So last week we talked about the new moon. So last week we had the sun and moon in Aries, right around 8-9 degrees. There's tons of Aries energy. Now the interesting thing, 1 week later, tonight, we have the sun at 15 that I mentioned, and now we have Neptune is at 0 of Aries. Neptune has entered Aries, and it's been an awfully long time since we've had Neptune in Aries. But you can see, you can see here that look at all the retrograde energy that we've gone back into Pisces. So we have Mercury there, we have the node, the whole stellium, Saturn in Pisces, Venus at 25, the node at 26, and Mercury at 27. So again, just like weeks ago, so we're basically rewinding the clock of how all the late Pisces energy was playing out 4, 6, 8 weeks ago, and we're replaying it. It's another pause, another reflection of this Aries, Pisces, Aries cusp energy, with the exception of this conjunction here, Venus conjunct Saturn, which is at 24 and 25. So that is making things like it was in the winter. This is like bringing a little more of a chill, a little more of a colder chill to the cosmic weather. It might be to the actual weather, but it's bringing it for more of the cosmic weather. So right now we have the sun and Neptune in Aries, but now Mercury is retrograde back to 27 of Pisces. So we have all this Pisces energy again. Here we are in spring, in April, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points in Pisces. Tonight they're all in the 5th house. They're in the Leo house. So a baby born at 9 o'clock tonight Eastern Standard, he or she would have that stellium in the 5th house. That would be a born actor or actress. That'd be amazing. And the sun is in the 6th house of work. But so that is all going to change. Obviously, we're going to move, but that's a lot of retrograde Pisces energy again, making things foggy. And there's a lot of weird things happening around the world again. You know, there's fighting and stuff, and it's popping up. There's some weird stuff, financial stuff going on that's foggy and a little more not as clear. But you just have to bide your time. I was watching a podcast. This time it wasn't astrology. I was watching a financial podcast with a financial advising team, and they were saying, the man and woman were saying, they were talking about some of the stocks and some of the market, and they were saying, this is what looks bad. This is what looks bad. This is what looks good. This is what the media is going to focus on to make it look even worse. And they said, if you can help it, don't watch the news. Don't watch the tickers. They're like, just pause, keep your money wherever it is, invest it or whatever, and just pause and toe the line and come back in a few weeks, 4 or 6 weeks, and then see where we're at. And they were not at all talking about astrology, because there are financial people that refer to astrology, and then there's astrology people that refer to financial people, so, vice versa. But this was just purely financial. They were just talking about history of the markets, and they were showing graphs of the history of the markets, and it was really, really interesting. And it got me thinking more about the transits and it relating to that. So all this retrograde energy, everybody's always like, oh God, Mercury retrograde again. But it just means it's a good time to pause. And I'm going to be flying soon. So that means we're going to double and triple check our itinerary in our app, double and triple check the time, the flight number, the arrival, double and triple check the rent-a-car, make sure all that is in line. And then one more time before you get to your destination, check it again. And that's all that means, is just be a little extra careful and fine tune and be vigilant. Just be more aware of your surroundings. Mercury is so interesting when you hear astrologers talk about Mercury retrograde throughout the year. Mercury is how we communicate with our environment. So Mercury in Pisces now retrograde is foggy. That is a foggy kind of Mercury, especially being retrograde. It doesn't mean it's all bad, but it means that it is foggy. So that could be a time where there's more pickpockets, where someone bumps into you somewhere and just takes your phone, or oh, excuse me, and takes your something out of your out of your jacket or something. And then going in Mercury into Aries, that is a more clear, direct energy, like I mentioned. But it just means just go over things 2 or 3 times and just be a little more careful and organized. And that also brings me to the point that in the astrological cosmos tonight, the Earth energy is very weak. Here we have, here's the Virgo. This is at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. And we have, this can be Connecticut, tri-state area, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, time, anywhere. This could even be Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, anywhere. But there's no Virgo, no major Virgo, no major Capricorn. I'm saying major. And we have that Uranus in Taurus, which is at 24 degrees. And that's it. So the Earth energy, some of us might be feeling fuzzy again, and we might be feeling as grounded. So you got to work a little extra at feeling grounded, because there's not a lot of Earth energy. The good side of that. Oh, Karen says, such good advice on Mercury retrograde. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was thinking a lot about it, and because of travel. And the Uranus and Taurus, at least that's not retrograde anymore. And what's nice about the Uranus and Taurus tonight is it's sextile this Mars in Cancer, which also is not retrograde and moving towards Leo. So this works, this Mars and Uranus, which is sudden energy and potential accidents, is softened by a sextile. So that's good. That gives an ease. And there, all this energy right now, even with the retrograde, this is unprecedented time to just take this raw energy and just do stuff, come up with new ideas. There's not a lot of blocks here for any of us. There's no major Earth. The Earth signs are very slow moving and very cautious. So that's the upside of not having a lot of Earth right now, is possibly not being as cautious, but that depends on the situation, whether that's warranted or not. You know, you have to be cautious when you're out in the public. You have to be cautious when you're traveling, you're with your family. You have to be safe. But if you have been hesitant and fearful about wanting to try new things or do something new, this is a good time to plant the seeds before Taurus and do it, because there's so much conjunction energy going on and sextiles. There's not really, we're not talking about a lot of T-square energies. And this chart, you know, just a reminder, we haven't had this Pluto in Aquarius since 1777 to 1799. Think about that, 1777. Think about how antiquated life was then, right? Simpler in some ways, but antiquated, with Pluto and Aquarius and all the developments of humanity, and now what we're seeing with AI and technology and everything. But that Pluto, the Pluto tonight, that Pluto is leading the chart. It's called a bowl shape. So the shape of this astrological chart is a bowl. And this is the leader of the bowl. And the bowl just means that all the planets are here, and then this side is missing, is empty and kind of quiet. And that also indicates the Capricorn and the Virgo cusps energy. So if you're feeling like fuzzy right now or not good concentration, you just have to double down on taking care of yourself and stay hydrated and just write it out. That's all. I even notice with myself in my own life, my schedule, I notice myself getting more tuned into some of these energies, and it's usually like a 2 or 3 week delay. It's almost like a delay on the radio or a live show that they might edit something out if someone swears or something. It's that kind of delay for myself. It's like a 2 or 3 week delay where I'll look at a chart, I'll look at how I'm approaching my daily life, and then I'll go, oh yeah, I talked about that 2 weeks ago, or I talked about that 3 weeks ago. Now I see how it's working. So it's very interesting. But you know, it's all that water. The water energy right now is huge. You know, Mars, Neptune, Mercury, the node, Venus, Saturn, all in water, and the moon tonight is in Cancer. It's the quarter moon phase. Last week was Aries moon, which is the conjunction. And then we go Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Aries and Cancer square. So that's really the only square that causes any tension this evening, is the Sun moon square, which is the quarter moon phase. Then next week will be the full moon. It'll go from Cancer, Leo, Virgo, full, and then it'll culminate full in Libra, which will be that opposite Aries Libra, which I'll be talking about again. That'll probably be the last time we'll be talking about major Aries Libra until late September, and when we go into Libra. But yeah, it's this really amazing time, and we have that Jupiter. Not a lot of air. We have the Pluto in Aquarius. We have that Jupiter in Gemini still. It's so slow. It's at 16, right in the middle of Gemini, but it is direct, and that is definitely enhancing communication. But what's more important about that is not so much not so much that it's just in Gemini in the cosmic chart, which a baby would have if he or she was born tonight, but more so what it does, where it is in your chart, because it's Jupiter and it's expanding. So how is Jupiter and Gemini expanding your communication in your chart, wherever Gemini is? For Gemini rising people, it would be in your 12th or first house. So if you're a Gemini rising person, if it's in the 12th, it may be expanding kind of your psychic energy behind the scenes. If it's in the first, you might be doing a heck of a lot of talking. Like you might be talking way more or emailing or writing more than you ever have. Like you can't get yourself to stop thinking or shut up kind of thing with Jupiter and Gemini. But so wherever that Jupiter and Gemini is, it's just going to expand that. So that's always an interesting thing. But yeah, it's a really interesting time. And even though we're in Aries, we don't have major Sag and we don't have major Leo. We don't have major Leo until that Mars goes back into Leo, which it will, and then eventually a couple months it'll go into Virgo, and that will change the scope when we get. It'll change it all when we get the Mars in Virgo, and then we get the Sun in Taurus, and then all this lack of Earth that's happening right now is that'll completely feel different. Especially, there's always a different feeling in a few weeks when we're in Taurus. It's hard to explain. I feel it when the moon's in Taurus. I like every month. I like when the moon is in Taurus for some reason. Moon is well placed, but it's a very calming for me. It's kind of a nice calming energy. It's really good when the Taurus moon goes through, and that moves every 2 to 2.5 days. All right, so let's see where we're at a little bit. Okay. All right, so let's talk about celebrities. So I have a lot this week. I have Herbie Hancock. He's an Aries 3 person. I've seen him in concert. He is a absolutely brilliant jazz, pop, pianist, synthesized person, composer, and he's a chameleon of sorts and does all sorts of genres. He is amazing. Bill Conti is the composer for Rocky. So he did the Rocky theme song, which I don't know if there's a more inspiring Mars Jupiter, kind of idealistic song than Rocky. I mean, Sylvester Stallone, he picked the right person for that because that energy is purely Aries, but it's also very, very Jupiter. And it's very idealistic, I'm going to fly now. Louis Johnson was one of the best bass players in funk, and he worked with Quincy Jones. He was on numerous albums, and he had a thundering, very fast Aries thundering kind of bass playing style, which is very indicative of having major Aries in the chart. Wayne Lewis, another musician, very, very good Aries musician in rhythm and blues music. Also, Belinda Lipscomb from a group called Midnight Star from the 80s, a dance funk group. Really, really good Aries energy. Bill Sutter the third, more rhythm and blues Aries people. And what's interesting is Aries people are tend to be good, especially with the constellation, certain degrees. Aries people are good with movement. So Aries people can be fast, but they can be good. It can work very well for athletics too, because Aries has a good sense of movement. But in music, the raw Aries energy comes through in the bands because whether or not they're classically trained or not and have that structure, but that natural Aries kind of childlike enthusiasm really, really comes through. Les Pattinson, another very, very kind of prolific Aries musician. Da Vinci, not a musician, obviously the Renaissance person. Da Vinci did all sorts of, what didn't he do, right? Painter, author, illustrator, poet, I think was he an architect? I mean, Da Vinci did everything. True, literally Renaissance, exactly. So again, that to me seems more idealistic in philosophy, that he was putting all his ideas in philosophy through his craft. And it also seems like these Aries people would be more versatile than the Aries 2 born tonight or the first Aries that are much more strongly Aries. There's a little more of a versatility. And he really wanted to show it, his creativity socially. Tim Curry, boy, Tim Curry, he's great. He's been in multiple theater, Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course. He played an eccentric character, but he's also been in the movie Clue from the 80s, the epic movie Clue, and all sorts of comic theater type roles in smaller movies. And he has a very, very strong, biting Aries kind of humor and wit about him that's very specific to him, but it's to me, it's very Aries 3. And we have Jerry Rafferty, who's a 70s and 80s musician, and he kind of dominated the airwaves with many hits, and very influential in 70s kind of AM radio. Liz Phair, she was also very much a pioneer and influential in 90s and 2000s empowering female musicians. So like the Lilith Fair movement for female musicians, late 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Liz Phair was absolutely one of the most prominent and assertive women to help that and make it happen, along with like Tori Amos, Sarah McLachlan, and some of those others. But those are all very strong women, and obviously they were tapping into some male and female god and goddess archetypes with that kind of movement of music. Stuart Adamson, he's the lead singer of a group called Big Country, and he was from Scotland, and the music was infused with Scottish kind of Celtic energy, and they had the song called Big Country, which was a big hit. He was very troubled and had a troubled life, but he was an amazing songwriter and singer, and very fiery, but also very incredibly idealistic and tinged with a little bit of philosophy and politics in Big Country's lyrics there. And the last one, I have a lot more, is Q-Tip. He's right on the line. He's on the line of Aries 2 and Aries 3, but I'm going to give him, he seems more like an Aries 3 person to me. He's an epic rapper from the 80s and 90s from a group called Tribe Called Quest, and he helped pioneer 90s hip hop and rap into the 2000s. He was part of the pioneering movement that they brought from the old school hip hop from the 70s and 80s. So that's another thing about Aries people. Aries people always, even in the smallest way, will pioneer and will influence and lead people. It's almost inevitable. And depending on the constellation and the degrees, whatever the constellation symbology is, relating to mythology, they can either harness it or go too far with things and get into hot water, as I mentioned with the Aries 2 people, which we talked about last week. But it's very important. So he's really good, and also very much more witty and verbal than the natural Aries, the Aries 1 decan and Aries 2. Like I mentioned, these Aries are a little more social, and that goes into their commentary, especially with rap. So I think that was everything there. And I've been doing some reels with this. Hopefully you've been seeing these. But, we have the Neptune entered Aries. Neptune is the planet of illusion, spirituality, and endings. And this is a new cycle for Neptune, 165-year cycle. So think about that. So amazing. 165-year cycle. Every single person and animal alive right now, and for years to come, will never ever see this again. None of us. Not even a baby born tonight. Not even a baby born in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. No one or no creature will ever see this this cycle again. So I think that's a gift. Like every day we're moving forward with this Neptune in Aries. And the Neptune, things aren't going to be as fuzzy. Some of those truths are going to, some of the endings of Pisces are going to be new beginnings. It's going to be rough though, in some ways. It's going to be rough with policies, kind of thing. And I saw a blurb that said that, I'm not sure if this is true, but said that a 32-hour work week might be implemented instead of 40 hours to change the definition of full time. That's interesting. 32-hour. I don't know if that applies to all fields or just to some, but I think that might be good. I mean, in other countries, you have people that like take long lunches and take naps, and in this country we have people, people working all day, and we don't hydrate or we don't eat, we don't nap or whatever, and that might be a good thing. But we're going to see a lot of endings come, and the last time was 1861 to 1875, which was 100 years after Pluto was in Aquarius. And that coincided when Uranus was in Gemini, which Uranus is going to be in Gemini soon. So there was a coordinating again. Again, that was from 1858 to 1866. So you just think about how long ago that was. I mean, 2000, when it's 2058, that'll be 200 years. But that is an amazing amount of time. So it's a collective new beginning, and it's to assert ourselves. All this Pisces energy of spirituality and fuzziness has a lot of good has come out, but also it's created sort of a holding pattern where things are not clear. So with all this, with the Neptune in Aries, things will get more clear and more direct, and things will probably get worse before they get better on a global scale, but it will probably be, it'll be good for the long term. So we're going from Pisces, which is drifting and receiving, to more doing and creating, which is Neptune and Aries. Less globalization, Pisces, and more independence, Aries. So we're probably going to see more groups of people, hopefully peacefully, either protest, activism, that are going to create more, the problem is people just don't know how to do it in a civil way. Like, it's people are just going nuts with things. And what I always look at is, this is tough. When there's someone in your family or friend group that differs from you politically, all of this is so emotional for us. This is the problem. It's so emotional. We have to find a way to be able to still respect our family and friends, even if they differ from us, even if they've flipped the script and switched. They were liberal, now they're conservative. They were conservative, now they're liberal. Or maybe they're in between. Maybe they're independent. Maybe they're grassroots. Maybe they identify, more with, I don't know. But it doesn't necessarily mean that person is a terrible, mean person. Now, it depends on what their values are. If someone that was pro-animals now thinks it's fine to just harm animals, then you might have an emotional cord with that. So if there's a cord, and obviously men and women have different emotional cords depending on what is being said in the policies. But hopefully with the Aries, if things can get out in the open and be more honest, people can make some of this change with policies and everything, and institute them in a way that people know what they're dealing with, kind of thing. But that's a tough thing right now for all of us, if especially politically, because there's just so much going on with the countries and policies and money and everything. We just have to try to be civil, and it obviously for a lot of people it's not easy. But that also plays back to, I'm not a licensed health person, but I'm very much a health enthusiast, and I'm very into health, and I do a lot of health research on my own, and I put pieces together from articles, but more so than ever is for people to live a healthy, take care of yourself, eat healthy, eat clean, and get rid of toxins, because the toxins affect our brains. It affects our gut, which affects our mood. The gut, brain, gut connection is all mood. That's all been scientifically established. So, people are living on fast food, living on coffee and sugar. And so there's nothing wrong with indulging, but I think in general, that's what we've seen. That's what we've seen over the decades. We've just seen people just take worse and worse care of themselves, the self-care. And that really contributes, I think, to a lot of this crazy thinking and extreme thinking too, especially politically. So that could be definitely a part of it. But yeah, there's a lot here. There's definitely a lot to talk about. And let me just see here. Yeah, that's just the general Aries. But yeah, you definitely want to, if you have your chart or your chart, you definitely want to locate where Aries is. Now, as I mentioned, Aries is at 15 tonight. So look at where Aries is between like 15 and 20 degrees. Next week, it'll be around 22. And it'll be getting into late Aries, which is the Aries 3 Decan, which we're talking about tonight. But definitely find out where it is and see how it's firing up your life and your energy. Now, here's another good thing is our Mars sign. Everyone has a Mars sign in their chart. Your Mars sign is your energy and your will. It could also indicate your health. So what does the 15 degrees sun in Aries, does that make any aspect to your Mars sign? That's also something good to look at. And that's temporary because, right? Because the sun in Aries is changing 1 degree. It's moving forward 1 degree every day. So that's only temporary. So for a Cancer person that's 15, or a Capricorn person that's 15 right now, or a planet, or Mars, it's a square, it's tension. To a Libra 15 planet, it's an opposition. But again, it's only temporary. It's going to move, and then eventually it's going to go to Taurus, and then I'll square the fixed signs. So it's a temporary thing. But if your Mars is in, let's say, like I said, Capricorn, Cancer, or Libra, you're going to get the opposition or the square, and that could create some tension with your energy or your health. If Mars is in a mutable sign, if it's in Pisces, it doesn't make a strong aspect because it's right next to, it's just a semi aspect. So you'd have to look at other things. If it's Virgo, it would be an inconjunct, Gemini would be a sextile, and Sagittarius would be a trine. So I think it would be good for Mars Sagittarius people and Mars Leo people natally with the sun at 15. But that's another thing to look at with vitality and everything. So this is chock full of stuff. I feel like now that we're in April, I remember what I was talking about the week of Christmas leading up to the new year and doing all the research for all these live streams coming up. And now I feel like we're really in the swing here. There's so much to talk about. And now I realize why there's so much astrologers on YouTube. Hundreds, if not thousands of astrologers. When I look up a video that like similar to what I do, it's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands. It's unbelievable how many astrologers there are doing all this stuff. But look at all this. This is like, it's endless. It's kind of like an endless stream of things to talk about and to help, bring to the surface. So it's great. But definitely different astrologers are bringing different things to the table. And I would say the majority of most astrologers that I'm watching are creating and bringing good value. There's a few that I don't see that much value, but, again, it's definitely someone's, you're either someone's preference or not. And hopefully people are using it in the right way, ultimately to help yourself or help others is a good service. however you can do it. Doesn't mean you have all the answers, but if you're approaching it in the right way, you can see how all this energy isn't always good or bad, but it's what what you make of it, kind of thing. And yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight is April 4th. We're still in Aries 2. Next week is Aries 3, and we're getting closer to Taurus. And of course, all this change energy, Neptune and Aries, sextiling now Pluto in Aquarius, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, good stuff. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. The live streams are here every Friday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and X. I really, really appreciate it. And I think within the next month or two, the channel will start growing a little bit more. I feel like with all this Aries energy, there's just no way coming out of the cold of the winter in most areas of the world that we're not going to be making more changes and kind of going for it. Great job. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. And I should be having an Aries video in the next 7 to 10 days. I'll have an update Aries video, just a general Aries video, but it will be an update for people that have Aries planets, kind of like what we talked about tonight. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Happy Aries birthdays and stay safe.